This is AV SuperFriends Off the Rails, an almost regularly scheduled open discussion on audio and video in higher education. We'll sound off about our most brilliant ideas, our dumbest mistakes, and everything in between. And because this conversation will almost certainly go off the rails at some point, we'll end up covering just about everything else. And now, the AV SuperFriends. For July 14th, 2023, it's the AV SuperFriends Off the Rails. Welcome back, everybody. Time for another Friday afternoon podcast adventure. Our first since being summarily escorted out of the Orange County Convention Center. We are no longer in the same room together. We have spread ourselves across the country.
Took a long time. We just got home. Yeah. It took that long for me to actually
This feels
here.
Weird, too.
Consider it that, this would be an AV SuperFriends classic episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Retro.
We've added more delay.
And lots more tape warmth.
Yes, we do that analog warmth of all the bits and bytes. I'm going to get right back into the classic mode and say my name's Chris Dector. I'm joined today by Jamie, Mark, Larry, Justin, and two special guests, Steve Greenblatt and Brittany DiCesare from Control Concepts. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
And you guys, you had last names. That's a thing. So the rest of us. We don't get last names.
This was raised as an issue, and I refused to change everything.
Not on this show.
So.
Only from a listener. It wasn't an issue for anybody else. If you say our last names, people know where to find us. So at this moment, it's just Chris Dector and you guys, and we're just ubiquitous nobodies.
Along for the ride.
Last names are TMI.
What if I did this instead and just say, we've already introduced first names. I'm just going to go last names here in random order.
Yes.
Rexing, Darling, Kolozinski, Reinhardt. You figure it out.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't confuse anything.
Mix everyone up. There you go.
I'm not even sure I even know how to do that.
Yeah, don't try to figure that one out. Anyway, so today, on today's show, we're going to discuss programming, and more programming. But first, how about some AV news, which is programming related? And this article comes from the past.
Seriously.
Links in the show notes down below. I don't have a better way to phrase it. I mean, I'm open to this, but honestly, until I saw the booth at Infocom, I had no idea that AMX was still around because they honestly gave up on Infocom a couple of years ago. They didn't even have a booth. There was one year, I swear, it was a folding table and said Harman on it. Seriously.
Paper flag.
Oh my gosh.
We're still here.
No,
for those of you using AMX,
congratulations. Left. They already left. They're gone. They can't.
And there's like this little placard that says, if you want AMX, go to this room. And it was one of the special invite back channel helper rooms. And it was literally nothing.
Are we going to talk about the article?
Yes.
I think we should.
We are.
Okay.
It's a press release linked down below. So they were talking about some additional hardware and things they had. But what was interesting was this little line they made, and this is why I'm bringing it up, because I'd like to pick Steve's brain and Brittany's brain on this. There's a note that said they're writing this hardware with an open API to let you use any control system, more likely the actual control system you're using, because it's most likely not AMX, and they've recognized that. So kudos to them for pivoting. But it's interesting to see a one-time giant in the industry come out and say, look, we know we are not the monster of control that we were. We're still making hardware. You can now buy our hardware. And they even reference that in their press release, in their article, to say, maybe this stuff is the only device you're using, and it's not part of a larger AMX driven install, but you can still use our hardware using whatever control system that you prefer, which I think is an interesting take and a way to maybe capture back a little bit of market share. Maybe. Any thoughts?
How could you couch it with maybe?
Maybe.
Oh, I was going to couch it with it's not going to happen, but hey.
Well, I mean, I checked out their booth at Infocom, and it's not just these little boxes. Like, they have touch panels that you can use with other hardware. It's an interesting approach, and I used to be an ACE registered, like certified programmer and all that, and so I know their product back in the heyday and back in the Panja days and every stage in between.
How old are you, Larry?
I'm old. I keep telling you this.
Yes,
man.
He's surprisingly
147.
All of us.
Yeah, but
looks good.
I used to like their stuff, and it was cool to see they were still making a quality product and they were being open about it instead of keeping their closed garden and trying to survive on their own.
But is it going to be like the Hipster AV thing to have all the new AMX stuff? Because you can have like So you can have like the old stuff, but the new version of it, like that play where it's like, no, remember, we're going back to AMX because we're retro with our vinyl and everything.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that today. I'm tempted to spec some of these boxes in an upcoming project almost out of spite.
just to see like the outside integrator and be like, what?
You can check out this box. Still? I don't know. I mean, so where do we see this going? Do we see open access to hardware like this becoming more common, or are we going to be forced into different walled gardens as we move from control system to control system?
I will defer to the other programmers here at large, but there's part of me that likes the approach of like open, just, hey, run what you brung, and then we'll just make it work on here. And I do like that. But that seems a little bit disruptive, but also good and fresh at the same time. I don't know.
I like the open concept as a experiment, but there's been ways of making open control systems for a while. I mean, Jamie's been doing it with whack-a-moles and Raspberry Pis. Like, there was already tools to do this, and the industry at large likes to have systems, I think, kind of safeguards in place for them.
Well, so looking at a project, Larry, and Justin, you chime in here too, because you get a lot of rando projects floated your way. If you had a sheet, a bill of material that said AMX or rando Raspberry Pi whack-a-mole controller, which one are you going to go with? Just
AMX.
Preference-wise. Right. So I think we acknowledge that there's at least they're not the bottom. All the like kludged together widgets and tchotchkes are. So they're at least above that. And maybe this is that litmus test to say they still are relevant at some level. Open it up and let's see who comes to the table.
I was going to say almost the same thing. I'm like, there's a little bit of, yes, you can get this box from Global Cache or from, build your own Heathkit something or other, right? But you guys, do you even do Heathkit?
Jamie's been shopping too much again.
But I think there is a little, and the neighbors are cutting down trees, so it's random noise. But I think there's a little bit of that, if they price it right and it truly does work like some of these other doohickeys, then there is some of that familiarity of, hey, this company's legit and they've been around and they know controls, so they're going to do it right, where sometimes you don't believe that will happen from the more economical tchotchke versions that we talk about on here. So that's where I think this is really interesting. And I did not stop by their booth a few weeks ago. So Larry's comment about they even have other things that are more open architecture, maybe I will go check it out, because the one thing that I do wish I could find is some of these button panels and some of these touch panels in particular that weren't just company specific. So if somebody's making a decent one in the right form factors that truly is able to be open and not some drag and, super limited drag and drop, HTML unsecured file or something, then I'm interested. So maybe they're heading in the right way. I don't know. Again, I've had some pretty poor experiences with the AMX control, which is why I am a little bit doubtful and suspicious, but I'm intrigued. So that's a start, right?
I want to know what the experts think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
I'm going to preface our comments with saying that first off, we are a partner of AMX as well as many other control platforms. So we must stay agnostic, and we will remain so. But I'll share what I can tell you. A couple of things. One is that AMX is part of Harman, so that's something to think about. And Harman owns a lot of brands, and those brands themselves are looking to integrate with any third-party control, not just AMX, which is a good sign and probably a foreshadowing as to where they're going with things, and that this really folds into that. Secondly, from our experience, and I could just tell you what we know is that AMX has always been fairly reliable from a control platform being very much moldable to any situation, and that's one thing that a lot of people appreciate, and we actually have heard a lot of people turning to AMX because they had products available. So I think that those were some of the things that have been changing recently. Now, I realize that from an outsider's view, they probably haven't innovated very much, and I think that they might even admit to that. But from the experience that we have with what is available has been positive. But these boxes in particular, I think that they're meant possibly to compete with, say, the niche that Global Cache was trying to fill. So that's a couple of insights there.
Mm-hmm. So,
well, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't disagree with anything you said there, Steve. I mean, I used to have AMX stuff all over the place 15, 20 years ago. And I think the biggest issue we had is, and I know they went through several variations of being purchased and merged and all that. And there was some kind of, it almost seemed like lost direction. So and at one point, they seemed like they were sitting on the sidelines of the industry, which was strange to watch them do. So, hey, I'll wish them all the best. I think if nothing else, I think we would all agree that the more competition and the more people we have out there innovating, coming up with things only makes our industry better. But still, I'd like to know where they keep their time machine to.
It sounds like they're becoming relevant again. Maybe, perhaps, possibly. Maybe.
I am. This is all the opinions of myself, but it sounds to me like when they were merged into the giant corporation of Samsung, we all thought, "Oh, smart things. This makes sense." Which we also thought when they merged into Harman that Harman's BSS would end up inside of all of AMX's programming. And I'm going to go out on a limb on myself and say maybe Smart Things and AMX control might actually start to happen. It's just a little late. Oh, wait. But maybe.
So late that it's early.
Well, hey, kudos to the people out there still using it because...
I don't know if you did go to their booth. It sounds like not many people may have looked, but they had a piece of hardware which was under glass, which I know not a lot of people put a lot of weight into, but apparently that was supposed to be their future and something that they're going to be doing that's going to support modern programming languages. So that combined with the openness of it, I think they're trying to maybe invent themselves as being a little bit more programmer friendly and a little bit more client friendly in that regard, so that trying to take advantage of some of the shortcomings that others have been facing.
Yeah, that product that was under the glass was the product that got me excited at their booth. And I tweeted about it while I was there. But when I saw this news press release come out, I was hoping it was that, because that is the processor that is, standard programming, whatever language you can make work with, and that's exciting.
Larry, you're not telling the whole story there. So I was sitting, I don't know where I was, but I had my phone on me, and I think Larry was texting or tweeting. I think you were texting the group, possibly.
He was literally...
Mm-hmm. Larry was getting pushed off the show floor as he was trying to go through AMX's booth. Like, no, wait, I got more stuff to look at. So Larry's a big fanboy now of AMX.
Mm-hmm. Getting all the mailers and everything.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yep.
On their Christmas list. All right. Well, we'll take a quick break. Come back. We're going to talk about some new approaches to programming and maybe what the future lies. Where the future. You heard me.
The future.
Be ready for it.
As many of you know, the Super Friends have always been better received when we have more input from you. So, here's your chance. Send us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and get involved with the show. We're looking for some topics to discuss, some fellow nerds to talk to, or just general AV awesomeness to brag about. But remember, we'll probably steal your ideas. And I suppose we'd take some criticism, but that wouldn't be very nice. Anyway, drop us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and find out how quickly we ask you to join this nonsense.
So the other day we were discussing how do we want to approach this conversation, and we were trying to figure out how do we, what's our starting point. And I said, let's just be honest. So here's backstory on this one. I got an email from Steve about, what was it, Steve, about a month ago? And you said, we've got some cool stuff going on. We want to talk about it. And we said, Sounds good to me, except we need to come up with kind of an approach. We want to open up the conversation and talk programming in general and different aspects to it and all that. And, I think that seemed to jibe with what you had in mind. And it was just one of those kind of open conversations of, this is probably not something that people talk about a lot. They'll write a scope of work. They'll hand off a bill of materials and a rough schematic with a bunch of inaccuracies in it, and then just leave it to the programming team to figure out how to make it work and fill in the blanks. I think we're all guilty of that. I am myself. And then when questions are asked, you're like, well, it's on the drawing. No, it's not. We'll figure it out. So
just goes like this. Everybody knows that.
So Steve, how do you want to start this conversation? You want to approach me? Why not? Let's take a step back. Why don't you give a bit of background on Control Concepts, what you guys do, what services you provide, how that works, and then where you see that kind of fitting into the industry, because you do have a unique approach to this, and I think it's worth discussing.
I appreciate that. So Control Concepts is a company that's been around for 26 plus years right now. We're one of the first independent programming companies. So what we mean by that is we're a third party that did programming for other companies. So we started off working with integrators. We've evolved and built relationships with consultants and with technology managers and enterprise clients. And over the years, as we've seen the trends change and the needs change, we started to look at how do we bring in modern programming languages into the AV space. And we about 12 years ago, we hired Jeff Mackey, who's somebody who I had known for many, many years and I looked up to as being one of the more talented programmers in the industry. And he really has the ability to find and create solutions given whatever technology is presented to him, and figures out the best way of doing that. And as we've taken our journey and over the years, we've seen many conversations about no programming required, configuration, simplification, all the buzzwords, all the reasons why programmers are not going to be needed and why we should be looking for other careers and other jobs. We decided that what can we do to really lean into that? And rather than saying we're going to fight this, why don't we say what can we do to empower programmers and how can we use this modern programming knowledge and approach to put that to use to benefit the industry? And what we came upon was we started building components that we give to other programmers to get their projects done quicker and easier and more efficiently. And where we've been able to use that to build the business is we solicit our services to manufacturers that are looking to leverage their API, make their products work with control platforms, as well as other middleware solutions. So essentially what we're doing is we're building a piece of software that programmers put into their projects so that they don't have to spin their wheels and pull their hair out trying to make a particular product work that they've never worked with before. They could just plug it in, essentially, and that's what everybody says that they want to do these days. And with confidence, know that that product is going to be able to be controlled. Then they could go about their business, making the client happy and doing all the customization that's required to make a project work. For configuration, that's essential, because if you're not in a configuration library, you kind of don't exist. So that's really where we started to see a big need, and we've also taken that to come up with different utilities that we create too that just help us to market ourselves and again kind of fill some of do some cool things that other people aren't doing, essentially.
So see, there's an element of kind of efficiency in this process, and you're providing these additional kit, whether it be software that can kind of come in and allow your clients to deliver product and deliver solutions much faster. Does that seem accurate, Brittany? Is that the kind of the take?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're in a place where everything wants it faster, easier, and cheaper. And in order to do that, you have to have something that you're starting, you have to start a few steps ahead of where you would have. And so we're giving those couple of steps so that programmers can start. Everything falls on the programming. It's great if everything's connected and hooked up, but you've got to control it somehow. And when everything is pushed towards as fast as possible, we got delayed, and now you used to have 3 weeks, you only have 1 week to program. The programmer is kind of like stuck, and everyone's looking to them to just make everything work like magic. So we're giving those tools and those resources, so they're not starting from scratch. So they're starting from, step 3 versus ground zero. And within that, it's how do we do that and not have the cost and onus sit on the programmer. So that's why we choose to work with partners, our partners being manufacturers, to pay for those solutions up front so that there is no additional cost found to the programmer to be able to make these solutions work more efficiently.
Yeah, I'm kind of going back to what you were saying as far as the easy button killing off programmers. You hit the nail on the head with your response, because I've had this discussion. I think maybe me and Steve had this discussion with someone else at a breakfast a few years ago. Well, I heard that. I was like, well, somebody has to program it at some point. Even if you all create the easy button for that integrator, that's basically what you all just described.
Exactly.
So now you've provided value. Exactly.
Yeah,
So
it's 4 weeks of, quote unquote. Imagine it's 4 weeks of work. It's either 4 weeks of work ahead of time, and then it's a minute to plug everything in and hit the button, or it's 4 weeks of work on the back end. So it has to happen at some point. If it's going to be easy out in the field to deploy it, someone's already done all of that investment in their time to make it that way.
And I can definitely see the value from the manufacturer side, because when I switched from my programming role to my engineering role, I would design product or systems based upon the quality of the drivers more than the equipment in some places. If I can't trust that company's drivers, I know it's going to take 8 more hours of programming time. That goes against the profitability of the job. So that key component of quality driver can definitely make an impact.
Absolutely. And I think it's what makes that a quality driver is not only who designed it and developed it, but how it was stress tested. Because you don't want to be stressing this in the field for the first time when you are under the wire trying to hurry up and get this done. You want to know that you can stand behind the company that developed this because you know they did the work and they put in the time and the investment to do it the right way. So it's really important that you look at not only is there a driver module or plugin available, but who did it, because you want to stand behind that company.
It's really interesting because I feel like we've talked about in the past about this outsourcing concept, and I think we all agreed that like programming and the knowledge piece of the work was always stayed in-house. But this is a unique play on that because you can still outsource some of that to gain efficiency, right? To gain like economies of scale. And I'm guilty of it, finding product or needing to use product that maybe we haven't used. In the web page and the materials may say, yeah, it can do these things. And I say, okay, it has TCP IP or whatever. So then I build it into the project, and then it just sits on the programmer's desk, and he's there. I'm trying to get this to work with this, and then it's doing this, but I'm not getting correct feedback, and we're just spinning cycles, right? It's just burning up time. And so I definitely see the value in taking this perspective, because I probably never would have thought about carving out a chunk of that work to have additional insight or try to find some additional efficiency, because we've always just kept it so close to ourselves. And I think this is a really good opportunity to assist, because I think anything we can do to kind of expedite our process and get things delivered on time and reduce the stress and burnout on our programming partners is definitely worth its weight here. So
a lot of times too, you have to think about that the way things are going, programming is breaking down into more of specialties. You have traditionally a programmer would do a whole project, but now that we're talking about doing HTML5 and we're talking about having to control things over a network and worry about security, and we're talking about the architecture potentially of controlling 100 rooms, these are all things that have different skill sets. So basically what we're trying to do is compartmentalize a part of it and say, okay, we'll take care of this for you, and that part you don't have to worry about.
Well, it's an interesting concept. If you guys have been talking, I'm thinking about something Larry said about selecting hardware. So basically engineering systems from the backside based on how easy it is to work with the software that needs to interact with that piece of hardware, as opposed to the maybe more traditional method of I'm looking at hardware and capabilities and how well that works, et cetera, and then we'll figure out the software at the end. And it's interesting to think about that, to say, okay, well, I like this piece of hardware, I like this camera, this microphone, this switcher, whatever it is, but there doesn't seem to be a module for this. There doesn't seem to be a driver for this. So I can then, as an end user, as a technology manager, say, all right, here's 3 things that I cannot find current modules for. So rather than trying to write a custom one or figure it out or leverage a slightly different model and change the feedback states and all the rest, contracting somebody like you to say, I need software for these so that when it does come time for me to integrate them, I know that this is a tested and approved piece of hardware and software with it. I'm going to roll out 25 or 30 or 60 of these things over the next year, so I don't have to worry about this. It's definitely an interesting approach. And I think, Mark, I think you're the one who phrased it as like you're spending that time up front, so you don't have to, I hate to phrase it this way, but kind of waste time later in the project as you're scrambling to get stuff done. Because one of the things we know about in universities is that day one time never shifts because classes start. So at 8 in the morning on whatever Monday or Tuesday that is, people are showing up regardless. You can't, there's no opportunity at all to push that deadline. So it's an interesting approach. And I see Larry wagging his finger.
Well, I'm just thinking about that deadline aspect. Like, one of the bottlenecks I've noticed within higher ed is we typically do not have as many programmers as we have installers. And so our on-staff programmer, my team has 1, 2 kind of, like, all the projects are finishing up right before school starts. And that's the bottleneck. So anything we can do to ease that, the labor that Mark was talking about, outsourcing, to make that last month before school starts a little bit more manageable, it makes all the sense in the world.
Well, it's that Parkinson's law thing, right? Like, the work's going to always take up the entire amount of time you've dedicated to it. And what's the most critical piece for the program? It's that last minute, right? Those last precious minutes in the room prior to actually commissioning and doing that handoff. And so if everything else ate up all the time, here we are putting the entire project on the shoulder of that programmer there the night before classes begin, right? And so looking at it from a PM perspective, where are my opportunity and my tools to drop in and say, let me buy some time here, let me buy some moments, some hours, some days to know and be cognizant that compression is going to happen at the end of that actual project. And I think that's where I see the value in this service. It's amazing. Jamie, you had something you wanted to jump in there. What do you have?
Yeah, I'm trying to ride the mute buttons more. So I silenced myself. Gosh. It's chicken and egg thing, right? So you started this and you're doing this service. Are you doing it from the manufacturer or from me? Does Jamie contact you? How does your normal progression look into doing this? Because your job's a big task. As you guys have said, you try really hard to make it on multiple, if not all, platforms. That's not easy. It's not easy for us to do one on one platform. So, chicken or egg? Who are you serving? How? Why? What do we do? How does anybody get hold of you? Are you working for manufacturers? Are you working for me?
I want to sign you up right now. I got a bunch of money. I need you to do some work. Where do I go? How do I do this?
So the answer to that is it can be both. Ideally, though.
Nah, get out.
Ideally.
It can be both, Jamie. It's right.
Ideally, we would love for the manufacturer to be the one that is contracting us to be able to do this. Because if you, tech manager, are coming to us with your needs, it's usually for a limited scope. It's usually to do exactly what you need it to do. We've done those, and we continue to have integrators and programmers who reach out to us asking us to develop these, what we call limited functionality modules, drivers, or plugins. But the way we like to really approach it, ideally, is to go to the manufacturer, to have them say, this is what we need this product to do, and be able to cover 80% of the functionality of the device, controllable functionality, versus the 10 or 20% you need for your specific purpose. And like I said before, we'd love for it to be at no cost to the programmer, no cost to the integration house. We believe that manufacturers should be investing in their product to the point of making it easy to program in the field.
What?
So kind of going to
you mean not hiding stuff?
Yeah.
I can't. Well, I gotta be honest. Sorry, Justin. I have to be honest on that comment. It is so frustrating to buy a piece of equipment that is promoted as can be controlled, quote, open API, and then have to register and obtain in non-disclosure agreements and all this other crap just to get that, quote, open source. I'm like, what are you doing? Just let us be able to use your product, because I experiment with all kinds of things, and I am always finding a thing that is really, for most purposes, does everything I've ever wanted it to do, but I can't make it do, I can't control it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's where manufacturers, a lot of our conversations are educating them, because they thought initially, oh, I have an open API that, you can grab it and do whatever you want with it. Well, most programmers don't have the time to go through the API to build the components they need to be able to control it. So it's us educating them to say an API is great. It's a great start, but it's not what people need in the field. You need to go a step beyond to make this even easier. And so our industry is coming around to this. Manufacturers are really starting to understand they have to support interoperability, and they have to be present in the control ecosystems. Otherwise, they're missing out.
A lot of them, most of them, big ones, little ones. I won't make you name names, but there's some big ones out there we know that don't have historically not cooperated with other people. And let's say big ones and small ones, they all are talking about this?
Yes.
Being open?
Yes. A lot more of the conversation is how do we show that we're open and that we can work with whatever platform someone chooses to put in. That's a lot of the conversation.
So kind of piggybacking off that conversation, and this may be more for Brittany. So is your clients non-control manufacturers for the most part then? Am I assuming that correctly? Like maybe, switchers, audio amplifiers, and people that make products? Because here's what I saw at Infocom, is I saw people that aren't control systems making products, leveraging their software on the back end, giving us more metrics and data. So is that something that you all are responsible for? Because if so, thank you. Like, who are you actually working for? Are you working for the Crestrons, Extrons, and AMXs purely and trying to work with, or is it just everybody?
Everybody. So we're that bridge. So we work for the third-party manufacturer to get them into the control platform. Control platforms also hire us to build drivers, modules, and plugins that they need done critically.
So are you all like consulting manufacturers and saying, this is nice, but it would also be awesome if you presented these values with your module? Like, is that conversation happening with them, or how does that play out?
We're headed there. Slow. It's I think right now we've gotten from the awareness stage to the what is involved in this. And I think that every year we're going to continue. If you told me that we were going to have as many conversations about non-proprietary openness collaboration as we did this year at Infocom, I would not have believed you last year. So I think that in the past year we've made a big jump, and honestly, I credit COVID for that. Unfortunately, but I do. I mean, because I think a lot of people realize they can't be pigeonholed, and I think that we have to be able to be flexible, and we need to be able to have a backup plan, and we need to be able to say, I have this equipment and I can't get to a situation where I'm one piece away and I can't complete my system because that's the only piece that I can put in there. So I think that we've really come a long way, and we're going to continue to move in that direction.
Do you think some of that came from this migration towards the I'm gonna call it virtual machine version.
That was
of
going to be my
control
question.
systems,
Yeah.
where now they're saying, hey, just buy off the shelf Nook, off the shelf Linux, off the shelf whatever, and you can run our
Compute.
Stop it.
Computer.
Stop. All right,
has an R at
bring
the
it.
end.
We're going to interrupt all logical conversation. Steve, compute or computer? Because you're
there's
going
only
to
one
get kicked off
correct
the
answer.
show.
None of us are like authorities on any of this, so we're going to reach out to other people
Come
who may
on,
be.
one or the other.
So there. I
Oh,
have
he's
to say
stalling
that there's.
already. We're coming back. Brittany, computer.
I'm dying at the video feed right now. It's
No,
like killing me.
I'm not doing anything. I have no idea what y'all are talking about.
I think
I
the
swear to God,
virtual
we're kicking you off
solution.
if you don't get there.
The virtual solution was coming anyway, and this accelerated it.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice one, Steve. Just bypass that whole thing.
Yeah, team compute or team computer. We need to know.
No, I'm out.
By the way, I heard a manufacturer the other day, and I won't say who, but QSys, who is now using the phrase compute device. And I'm like, all right, so now you're giving me half the
It's going to make its
half
way
the
back
language
around.
back, but
Yeah.
you could replace
But
that
I'm
entire
okay
word with
that.
just the letter
compute
R.
module, compute
Yes.
device, compute mechanism, compute machine.
I think they've recognized
and
that
computer.
phrasing is weird enough that now they're adding the thing on, because compute is not a verb, it's or not a noun, it's an adjective.
It's a verb. Compute. I'm going to compute something. I'm going to verb it.
Well, it's a
That's
verb or an
So-
adjective, yes.
It's a verb in
I'm sorry.
Kentucky.
I'm sorry. Well,
I don't know
Welcome
about
to the
everybody
show.
else,
What was
but
the
it's
question?
a verb in Kentucky.
Yeah.
welcome to the show. Is some of the, and he answered it.
Virtualized.
He did. So I want to recognize I did hear your answer. Yes, but my question was: is the drive towards this? We're now taking control systems off of these dedicated hardware pieces and putting them on commodity hardware. That's even harder to say than computer, but commodity hardware. And in essence, when they did that, they had to open some things up because it has to run on somebody else's OS. And is that just helping us? It's just helping the battle. And Steve was basically saying, yes, it did help. Did I misconstrue that? Because we did go a little out of whack there.
No, not at all. I think there's just things that you have to think about, because our world has never been. A lot of people don't think about the fact that I can have a server-based solution. What do you mean I don't have hardware in the room? I mean, and honestly, I think our industry has been locked into the fact that this is the way we do things always, and it's and some of it may be being protective for people's careers and jobs and just their way of doing things, and then others is just that they just have to realize that we're evolving, and evolution is a good thing. But
So
there are also, security issues, and I know that that's a buzzword, but that's something to be thinking about, and you also have to know how do I maintain a server now to control my classrooms or whatever I may be doing, which is a different need and a different vocation than just this black box in the room.
Do you feel like you're having to brush up on your security skills more and more these days? Or what does that look like with zero trust coming and all that good stuff?
Well, it actually plays very well in our favor, because the more products that are going to need to be controlled over the network, the more they need to be looking at security, and that's not easy for anybody just to whip up. So it really does need some chops to be able to write the code to make that work consistently.
Do you have more conversations these days about that subject than, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, even with manufacturers? Are they becoming more aware, hopefully?
Yes, they're definitely becoming more aware, but I'm actually surprised we're not seeing as more security in control and communications yet. Quite honestly, I would have expected it to be further along.
I think some manufacturers believe security is more like a black hole of money. They don't really see a lot of ROI dumping a lot of money into security right now.
Or somebody else's problem.
Exactly.
My problem.
Exactly.
So how's your staff? How do you staff? Do you have a security expert? these are a lot of very detailed and intricate skill levels. And I don't, do you run this through committee, or do you have one person that focuses on one thing at it? You can see what I'm getting at. I mean, not everybody that can program is a network security professional. Mm-hmm. Not everybody that's a network security professional knows how a contact closure works, right? So how are you staffed? How do you find the people? What do you do? How do you make these things?
It's actually really interesting. We're always recruiting because we're always trying to find that right person. It's somebody we believe, based on our experience and based on making mistakes and based on the results we've seen, is that we want somebody who has an AV background, who does control programming, but realizes that they don't want to be what the term that I've been told, a professional configurator. They would, instead of doing the same thing over and over again, they want to be challenged. They want to do something that is more creative, and they want to be able to spread their wings. And so a lot of these people on their free time, they're writing code, they're experimenting, they're learning, they're doing things that they do for fun. And so that's really the type of person that we're looking for.
So do you want an AV person, or do you, when you recruit, let's say you're pretending you're recruiting on a college campus, am I stealing it, Larry? Am I stealing it? You know where I'm headed.
No, you're not. I wasn't going to go there. That's our usual, but you can take it.
No. When you're recruiting, are you looking for an AV person who can program, or are you like, give me a kid that can make a video game, and by God, I'm going to make him awesome, or her.
So I always say we would rather have an AV person who understands our industry, what we do, knows what they're getting themselves into, and I'll explain why. Because a software developer in the real world, outside of AV, would be very frustrated being thrown into our environment. And I say it this way: they're used to coloring with about 256 crayons, and we give them about 8. And we ask them to create results, and that could be very frustrating to a software developer who has been used to having all the libraries and tools that they have outside of AV.
Now, with more standard programming coming, do you see that changing now? Because if our industry changes, and now we can bring in those HTML5 experts or whatever and teach them AV, would that change your mindset depending if the market shifts a little bit?
Now that we're seeing people say, well, we're Lua or we're Python or we're...
Kinda. I mean, it's still not full versions of anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, too, a big piece of what we do is supporting the programmers when they have questions. So our team needs to understand the situation that they're faced with. So when programmer A is calling up and saying it's not working, I'm using what you built, but it doesn't work, 9 times out of 10, it's just a little bit of education we need to provide, not what we wrote. But if our team weren't experienced in that, didn't know what situation that programmer's facing, it's harder to be able to put yourself in those shoes unless you've experienced it. So that's something we pride ourselves on, is that our team has 25 years of that programming background.
So kind of looking at the landscape here. And kind of
wait. Larry, did you get your question?
Oh, Larry, yeah, get yours in.
I have not got my question in.
Everybody stomps on Larry.
It's okay.
And by everybody, we mean Justin and Jamie, but yes.
Yeah, pretty much. So we've talked about interoperability, and we've talked about open API. Have you had a chance to discuss with manufacturers who just put out bad APIs? I can't think of all the ones that have my feedback whenever I do something is okay. Like, are they willing to listen now that, yeah, if we're going to get good metrics, we need information back that's useful?
Okay.
Well, so I will say it's encouraging that there are manufacturers that are consulting with us before they develop an API, which is really good. And again, I think we're really heading in the right direction. I'm incredibly encouraged over the last couple years. There was a period of time, if you asked me 5 years ago, I might not be as encouraged, but I'm incredibly encouraged with the direction that manufacturers are going in these days. And I think that is a more attentiveness put toward, I need this because this is a critical component of my product. And we're trying to say to them, great, we also need these other add-ons to bolt into this to say, okay, here, I don't want to just give you the ingredients. I want to give you the fully baked good. And that's kind of where we're going. The other part of it too that we also are up against is that there's a lot of sort of working stuff out there, and that's something that we try to navigate through as well. And that, so we're really always trying to develop this credibility to say you could trust what we're doing because it's sanctioned by the manufacturer, it's tested, it's maintained, it's supported, and quite honestly, when firmware changes, we're there to make it work. It's on fire, and we better fix it and get it up and running.
I've used a lot of that sort of working stuff. I know it.
Sort of working is what I achieve. Yeah, I mean, that's my goals most of the time.
It's a lot of the industry.
I mean, it sort of works good enough.
So looking at the like what's in front of us here, I kind of want to look into the crystal ball a little bit. We've seen a lot in higher education where this pendulum has swung to these, Zoom rooms, team rooms, things that are just maybe just glued together with some JSON programming. What's your kind of perspective on that kind of room kitted thing? It still has some language, some open pieces that are going on in the background, but do you think that is harming the kind of the control industry, or do you think that that's kind of just going to collapse anyway, and we're going to see that we're going to have these common denominators that just are going to run open language, whether it be HTML5 or something on the like, and all manufacturers are going to kind of make their way to the middle? Like, what's your opinion on that?
I think that it's something that creates awareness. If you could see what that provides and you take it for what it is, it's good. Just like configuration, they say configuration, you don't have to be a programmer. True, but you still have to know how you want a system to work. And when you get your hands dirty with that and you start playing with it, you realize, this isn't so easy, and this is something that I really need to know what I'm doing, or I've gotten myself to hit some dead ends. So I think having and we actually developed some things to work with Zoom Room to help make that JSON file easier. Those are great entry level for a specific to solve a specific need. It would be great if they were able to evolve and do more, but if you stay within the boundaries, it's good. It's the key is that you have to understand what the parameters are when you get into it, and that we are hearing a lot of people say that they want that Zoom interface, and because that's what everybody's used to, and 5 years ago we probably said we wanted everything to work like an iPhone, and before that we wanted it to work like Windows. So I mean, it's just the new theme right now.
Did we ever say Windows?
But do you think that that's an IT preference, or do you think that's like
if that's what you understood a user interface to be, I'm talking 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Did we?
But going back to that Zoom room or even the Teams room philosophy right now, do you think that's just like a path of least resistance because people have been using it so much and they've already trained themselves around that experience, and that's just a UI preference, or is there something to be said about, if I have all this Microsoft stuff and it's room ready, I throw it in, I don't have to worry about it from my IT perspective. It's going to just work.
Because knowing how the UI, kind of going off what Mark's asking, the UI to me is not easy to use. And it's not like kind of what you're alluding to. It's not flexible. And that's what we call in Kentucky sort of working as a Zoom room or a Teams room. It's almost there, but it's not there yet. So
well, how many people were basing their systems around a Cisco Touch 10, not long ago? I mean, that was the previous request. So I guess it's what's the most prevalent user interface that's familiar in your organization, and that's what we're going to build upon. And because that's something that everybody uses at their desk, and now they go to the conference room and they use it. But But to your point, having that is good, but it's not really a control system. It's just giving you a little bit of control. And I honestly don't know that it is really too effective to solve a need per se. It's just a nice extra to have.
And Justin loves them. He's all Zoom room over in Kentucky, so I know
100% Zoom room.
100% Zoom room everywhere.
We forcefully built about 20 plus, and I'm over it.
Okay. The kind of looking at kind of where you guys are, like where, if people wanted to kind of explore this, manufacturers were like, what way would they, what's the path for them? Like, how do they kind of say, hey, I have this thing, or should it go through manufacturer? And kind of go back to what Jamie asked earlier, is it reach out the control concept and say, hey, I have this issue? Like, what's the most effective way to kind of get some solutions together here?
Yeah. So we would love for the manufacturers to reach out to us. A lot of times the integrator may come to us and we ask for them to make that connection to us so we can chat with the manufacturer directly. Again, so the integrator programmer is not the one paying for the solution. So ultimately, it's really just opening up a dialogue with us, and we take a look through the documentation, protocols, your functionality, what you're looking at, and see how we move forward together.
A lot of times they need a business case too. So we think that it's really a triangle, because we need the clients to be demanding this, to say, hey, I'm going to use your product if it is easy, and if you get me closer to my result, I'm going to favor your product over others. And we're seeing so many lookalike products these days. It's a great way for a manufacturer to stand out.
Okay.
Steve and Brittany, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I'm actually making notes here of future projects I'm going to reach out to you guys to talk about. But you didn't say one magic word, and I'm not going to spoil what that magic word is. We're going to take a quick break, come back, and we're going to talk about that magic word, because it is the future. At least they keep telling us that.
21 by 9.
Hey y'all, I've got this new show I got to tell you about. It's called AVSF Live. That's LIVE exclamation point. First off, all you need to do is go to avsf.live.live, not .com, not .net, but .live. Yes, it's a website, does work. We're going to try out this new live video thing. It's probably going to go over like a hair in a biscuit. You got to check it out. Come to the tweeters and look us up on LinkedIn to find out more information. We'll see y'all soon.
Good Lord, do we need some new commercials? All right.
That was a good one, though.
It's my favorite.
Never ever gets old.
Just this part.
Never.
Nobody knew what hair in a biscuit thing. I don't. Like, that's common.
Made that up.
I didn't make it up. I've used that my whole life. Are you crazy?
Retroactive phraseology. All right. So the magic word you guys didn't use was, and I'm torn between if this is a kudos. It's not free, Jamie. Knock it off. I'm torn between if this is a kudos or if we missed something. But AI, because that's everywhere now. It's all AI. Oh, you guys had the right response.
The program is going to program itself.
It's going to program itself. Yeah. So
I don't know if it's that.
Mark, you mentioned the other day that you guys are actually leaning kind of hard into this for some entry level, like that first tier response stuff. And we know it's not AI; it's just a large language model. But still. Bring that up a bit. Talk about that a little bit, and then I'm curious to hear what Steve and Brittany think about that. Is there potential for this sort of things to do some of these automations, or is it just going to make things way worse?
So I think this is a fork. There's a lot of different ways you can go in this conversation. I will kind of explore and tease out where we're seeing it right now. It was asked from our executive director, our CIO, like, hey, we have access through training. We would like to go get some ChatGPT and other API training for our tier 1 staff. And is that attractive? And that in conjunction with some of the pieces we may have seen from the support side, being call center and metrics gathering as well. There is a lot of intrigue, I think, from the C-suite around leveraging AI to start to tell this data story. And we are looking at as AI as a language of itself, and that API but it is written to have access to our Internet of Things that have persistent connections to the larger internet, right? And so we're in this weird between programming and like the large brain in the sky cloud AI thing, right? And so what's going on there? I'm intrigued of what does that mean towards programming. I'm not saying, hey, let me just ask ChatGPT to give me a Crestron or a Lua program. That's not what I'm asking for. But are you seeing any maybe manufacturers that may be asking like, hey, our thing's going to be AI ready, connected with an API that's going to be there? And has that changed the way we're looking at it? Because we are actually going to train some staff on that API and what it may mean to our data set and how that actually corresponds to what we're doing from first the support side and that metrics gathering. But I'm just curious, has anybody else even started kicking around this piece and like looking and at least thinking about that? And it's okay if the answer is no. I'm totally fine being crazy as shit on this. It doesn't matter. So.
On the residential side, there's a company called Josh AI. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they announced that they're going to have something about like Josh GPT something or other. So I think that that's probably where we're going to see an entry point into it, is in some way voice control or being able to make systems a little bit smarter to interact with. But it, to your point, an API is a great starting point and can be a way of being able to tie things together. Potentially having good information and collecting data that then can be useful. That would be really valuable. We've been talking about that for a long time.
Mm-hmm. And like for us, we were intrigued by it was. After getting back from Con, we did that session with the AI group from Liberty, right? What was it? Teleportivity. And that on-ramping platform they're kind of offering where you could they'll give you that front end and that form to start putting your data into that then became scrapable by the API. And they were kind of giving you that access. And in real time, we were kind of looking at, they had set it up for some basic troubleshooting. Scan this QR code, open a chatbot, and go wild for tier 1. But then we started thinking about it from the perspective of system information, last service, hours of usage, all of that. And that was readily available too. And it's easy to go from that to the reporting side of that and like having the AI actually generate these reports because you have that persistent connection, you have that API open, it's there. And to me, that was where it made the most sense for us as our kind of initial baby steps into this AI realm. But I know that there has been a lot of stir and buzz around just LLMs in just the support tier 1 scenario, but I think we're trying to look at it as to help us some of that metrics gathering and telling that story. So, and I don't know if anybody's listening on there, and if your university is doing this or at least thinking about it, I'd love to hear from you as well. And please follow up with us. But there is that cross section. What does that mean to the hardware, the program that's running natively in the room? Does that play into this?
Honestly, I'll say I don't think that we're there yet. I don't. I haven't seen it actually be prevalent, but I wouldn't be surprised. There's certainly throwing the terms around, but I'm not sure that we're seeing something that's tangible that we could say is adding value yet. It's more of we want to be able to catch people's attention, and we want to be able to say that we're aware of this, but it's but the value isn't there yet. But the things that you're mentioning, I think, all make a lot of sense, and just being able to recall information. I also look at it from the perspective of making a system smarter. Instead of having the automations built in, make those automations be more adaptable based on the actual usage of the system and the predictability of what somebody needs, rather than saying this is what we think that they need.
Mm-hmm. And that's spot on. Exactly what we're thinking is how can we look at that usage, right? And so that we're seeing, trends where this space, these curriculums, this pedagogical use is doing and using the systems in these ways, and start to have a better data-driven kind of conversation around that. Does that drive what we should be supporting and providing for these different colleges and different units, and where it's not just this ubiquitous approach of everybody gets the same thing, and be more tailored and actually spend things more correctly. So at least that's our hopes out of kind of going through this. It's going to be a hell of a journey. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be weird. I mean, just the networking and security side of this alone is going to be tricky, to say the least.
Yeah, I would agree with you there.
Steve, on the other hand, you could just put the phrase AI enabled in front of everything you guys do and just lean into it. So
It seems to be what other people do. It's okay.
It's almost
And
like
I would
works with
say,
Alexa. You know?
by definition, probably what you all are doing is more AI enabled than some of these cameras we're buying out there.
I was thinking that exact same thing during this conversation. I feel like this is actually automation at its like truest level. You're kind of solving that problem.
Right.
I will say one of the cooler things that we do, which and Brittany could talk more to it too, because she's more hands-on with the clients, but a lot of the auto camera tracking where we're actually taking two pieces of equipment and marrying them together through an API and actually using the trigonometry of where somebody's located in a room. Now we're talking about science and technology, and we're actually doing something that's innovative.
Yep.
but the camera points at who's talking.
And it's AI.
Exactly.
It says it on the box.
It's a capital AI or little AI. Makes a difference.
We get it. Steve, you're right. There's a lot of terms floating around right now, and it's just not AI.
And gentlemen's buying all of it. Yep. You need it.
Maybe I should make like Justin GPT that just gives out
Oh, you
Kentucky
should.
sayings.
You should.
And like, so if
yeah.
you needed something clever to say that's more
Like hair and a biscuit.
Southern, like hair and a biscuit, for example, like you could type in a sentence and then it spits it back out with my verbiage.
We'll train one up specifically
when I
for
brand
us.
How
my
much would that
whack-a-mole
cost
system,
to write? Can you write that for me? We'll talk after the show. We won't waste show time. We'll work on it later.
We'll get it. We'll get the interns on that.
Yeah.
Jamie, go ahead.
He gave up. That was just enough to just say
Someone's outside with a chainsaw
Yeah,
right
he's
now.
got chainsaws going. Yeah.
Guy out there revving his
cutting up dogs in the background.
cutting up dogs. Good
Larry,
Lord.
now's your chance. Larry, now's your chance.
I'm
Jamie
good.
can't talk. Okay. All right.
Actually, send the guys over with the chainsaw.
Just so you can get a
Larry's
word in.
team is over there.
Oh, that was pretty clever, Larry. That was pretty clever. I like it.
All right. Well, Steve and Brittany, thanks very much for joining. Any free plug time here? How can people get a hold of you? How do they, I'm going to do it. I want to talk to you guys about some hardware which sort of works and should be made to work better. How do people get a hold of you? What's that process look like?
Yeah, so all of our information is at controlconcepts.net. So you can fill out a form, or all of our, phone numbers, emails, everything's on there. You can also find me on LinkedIn and Twitter at Britt Dice.
And for me, you could find me at Steve Greenblatt on social media, and actually do another podcast, or two podcasts, believe it or not, on programming. That if you like this talk, you could check out. One of them is with James King called Ask the Programmer, and another one is on aviation with Rich Fagoza called The State of Control. Both are really continue this conversation a bit, and we're open to more guests and more topics and having more of this conversation. But in the main thing that we wanted to share is that we wanted to bring light to the importance of programming and be able to do more to help the industry. So thank you for giving us that opportunity.
Thank you for being on the show. That was great.
Well, I think it's an interesting approach to this, as opposed to just like I said at the beginning, just here's a scope of work and a bill of materials, and leave it to that guy who's stuck there all weekend, or gal who's stuck there all weekend, and let them figure it out. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can be a little more intentional and a little more holistic about our approach to these things.
Thanks for coming on.
Solve it at the manufacturer level.
That's right.
Yes.
They don't want to do that.
Asking for that for years.
All right, thanks very much, everybody. Well, we've managed to ruin yet another episode of AV Super Friends Off the Rails. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. If you complain loud enough, we might just invite you on the show.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV Super Friends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.
How much are you willing to pay for whack-a-mole drivers? How much is that worth to Jamie?